Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Patricia. In this video, I will be showing you how I resize this unflattering oversized men's blazer into this very flattering oversized women's blazer. This tutorial is very detailed and has every step you will need to resize any oversized men's blazer, so make sure to watch to the end. This tutorial can also be used to alter any oversized men's coat as well. As usual, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. Now, let's get to the video. So this is a blazer that I have. It's a women's blazer with a men's cut. So I'm going to use this blazer measurement. If you have a blazer that fits you well, you can use that. If you do not, then you can go ahead and measure your shoulder. I went ahead to measure the shoulders and it's 5¼ here. And then here is about 5/1/8. If you don't have a blazer that you're already on, you can wear the blazer and then you can just have a feel for where your shoulder is. Okay, you can raise your hand to see the movement. That will tell you where your shoulder is. If you want it to be a little over, then you can just add a little bit, about 1/2 inch, depending on how wide you want it to be. I am not too much of a fan of the crazy men's oversized blazer. So for me, I think this is fine. So I'm just going to use my pin to pin it right here. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and use my seam ripper to get into the blazer. For most blazers, usually you find the opening in the sleeve. Here is an opening for the blazer, so I'm going to go ahead to unpick that. I've gone ahead to unpick the opening. At this point, I'm just going to go in and pull it out. Opening this blazer, I realized they've actually sealed the sleeve from the rest of the blazer. So I have to unpick the sleeve. Luckily, that's what we want to do. But in a case where you just wanted to just make the blazer smaller at the waist, that will be an issue. So I'm detaching the sleeve lining. It looks like without this, I'm not able to do much. See, it's been sealed. See where the sleeve is? It's been sealed inside. So I need to detach it to be able to get to the rest of the blazer. Okay, so I have detached the lining from the outer shell. They also seal the sides as well. You want to unpick all these things to just be free of this. Okay, so now that I've detached the sleeve from the lining, I can go ahead to pull the rest out. Now I've been able to turn it inside out completely. For the neck, I'm not going to mess with it because we don't need to do anything over there. Next, I'm going to detach the sleeve from the shoulder point. So I'm just going to be opening up this point. This is the shoulder. The first sleeve is off. Please comment below if you agree with me that unpicking is the devil. I have gone ahead to remove the sleeves. So this is the blazer on me. Sorry you can't see all the way down. Look at the pattern. I'm going to remove this because I want to keep this before cutting the main fabric. I've gone ahead to detach the shoulder pad, but now I'm just going to leave it like this and I'm going to go ahead to turn it inside out. I've gone ahead to make sure that it's laying the way it's supposed to sit on the body. And I'm just going to take my blazer. Again, if you don't have a blazer, like I said, you can always measure where you want it to be. But the most important part of this whole project is the shoulder area. The sleeve will have to run into this area. I am going to take my blazer and I'm going to align it. So this is just like hacking a pattern that you already have of any outfits. I do have a video where I show you how to hack a pattern. It's basically about the same process. So what I'm doing is just making sure I'm aligning the shoulder line. So I'm just going to pin again, and I know I did this earlier and the previous one was to just show you what to do if you don't have a blazer. So I'm just going to make sure that my shoulder is aligned properly. This is the front of the blazer, right? So we want to transfer the front armhole to this blazer. So in order to do that, I'm just making sure that my blazer is nicely laying flat. But as much as possible, you want to do your best to transfer the points. So I'm just using my pin. I'm gonna pin right through all the way to the blazer at the back. You can just pin as many times as you want. I'm just going to mark the pin points. It's just going to help draw this line into this right here. Okay, we have to remember that we're going to include seam allowance. I've gone ahead to wear the blazer to make sure I'm getting this right. So this is the part that I marked. Okay, I've pinned it inside. Ouch. And then this is the part that I haven't pinned. There have been a change of plans. I've decided to reduce the size of the blazer basically before I tackle the armhole, because the armhole, if you get it wrong, you are done. The armhole is the trickiest part. I'm going to use my blazer that I have. I'm going to just lay it down. For blazers, there is this piece that runs in the middle between the front and the back. So what I'm trying to do is reduce the back, but I'm not trying to reduce this as much. Right now I'm just reducing the back. I am going to measure from the neck down to where the armhole starts for this middle part. Where the back joins this middle part, I am come to measure all the way down. When I measure from here, I have 8¼ inches. So that's all we need for this. So now with my blazer, I'm going to do the same thing, transferring that measurement. I'm going to draw a line that goes into somewhere here. That's all I need to do. So for me, I don't need to cut all the way down, but if you have to, then you may have to cut all the way down. I'm going to unpick this seam and move it all the way here. So if I move it here, now do you see what's happening? The armhole is taking a whole new position. So all I have to do is to just mark my line and join it. I also measured this middle part of my other blazer. I am going to make sure that I transfer it here. For my blazer, it is 4 inches, but this is almost 5 inches right under the armhole. So I just have about 5/8, and I'm going to take that out of here. So that's going to reduce this, and I'm going to get the right size for me. I've gone ahead to unpick this portion. This is the middle part I was telling you guys about. I also want to reduce the front a little bit, so I am just going to be reducing the armhole area about 1 inch. I don't want to deal with this pocket here, so I'm just going to taper it in, and also this side is good enough for me, so I'm going to do that to the other side as well before I even touch the armhole. Before I stitch, I'm going to iron these out, and also before I stitch, of course, I have to cut the excess. So the point that I've marked is going to be the new seam line. I'm going to make sure I use the same seam allowance it came originally. This seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch. I have gone ahead to press this part so I can cut it. I'm just going to follow the blue line that I marked. For this part, I'm also going to cut, making sure I'm leaving my seam allowance. The part that goes up, I'm not touching at all. Okay, so for the back, I'm not going to cut just yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just align the seam allowance of the middle part. You know, this part I didn't cut it at all. This is the original seam line. So I'm just going to align that. So you see where I ended my mark? It's just going to sit on there. So I've gone ahead to stitch the sides. Do you see the progress? I literally didn't have hope for it. The back is just fitting perfectly. I'm going to press the seams that I've just stitched. There's a dart here. I'm going to go ahead to take in a little bit of the dart to give me a more feminine look. This is actually a look. All right, so for anyone who is interested in also taking in a little bit of the dart at the front, I'm just dividing into two and then using a pin to mark that point. Okay, so this is my middle point of the dart. I'm just going to come in half an inch. I'm eyeballing it, so this is half an inch, and I am just going to pin towards the top of the dart. So I did the same for the other side. So I'm going to stitch, get here, and then come here, and that will be it. All right, so for my back, I've decided to close this vent. I don't like it. Okay, so this is the back of my blazer. This is where the vent is. I'm just going to detach the lining from the outer shell, and I'll just join it. I'm gonna have to detach the lining from the outer shell, so I'm just going to pin it together and stitch. I'm going to make sure that I come in somewhat a little bit to avoid this part that is torn. This fabric is fraying a lot because it's linen. It's definitely seen better days. It's a lot of fraying. I've gone ahead to press, and you can see that after pressing the seams, it's much flatter. So I'm just using my tape measure as a ruler to redirect the seams. You don't have to do that. If you want to cinch in the waist a bit, you can use this time to do that. Taking apart ready to wear also helps you learn. As I'm taking things apart, I'm actually learning a lot. I'm just going to draw a line to meet my new seam line. This is where we shifted this middle part of the blazer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead to cut this measurement factors in the seam allowance. I'm going to cut on this line because when we stitch, this is a seam allowance and this is going to go all the way. The blazer has a lot of layers. I am just cutting the outer shell and then I'll cut those ones as needed. I want to keep this blazer as original as possible, so I'm going to unpick this little strip. All right, so I'm gonna have to remove a bit of that. So I'm going to use the cut piece as my guide on the other side. Alright, so the shoulder bit is cut off. I am going to cut this extra fabric that I have here. I'm just going to go ahead to stitch these sides, especially in the armhole where we tend to move our arms. This part had an interfacing. I do have some interfacing. I'm going to attach the interfacing to this side of the armhole. Alright guys, so I've gone ahead to, replace all these strips that came with the blazer. My advice is when you're cutting your blazer and you see that you have all these little details, pay attention to the way they've been placed and replicate the same thing should you happen to cut it. I've gone ahead to stitch these strips. I guess it's to reinforce the armhole. Also, I went ahead to press an interfacing on the back just like it was on the original armhole. Next, what I'm going to do, as you can see, the shoulder pad is in excess. I'm going to align the middle of the shoulder pad to the middle part and I'm going to pin it. So after doing that, I have this space here, and that is because the shoulder pad was stitched to the collar and I don't want to mess with all of this. What I'm going to do is cut very close to the seam. So now this is going to be over. I'm going to have to trim around it or just fold it a little bit like this to meet this portion and then draw a line. Because it's a shoulder pad, you want it to seamlessly flow into the rest of the body. I'm just going to go ahead to trim in bits. What I'm doing is basically trying to grade the shoulder pad. This is smaller, but I still need to cut a little bit. So now, if I align it, there's no excess anymore. So if you do this and it feels bulky, just try to grade around. You don't want two layers meeting at one point. You want the layers to be gradual. So this is fine for me. Next, I'm going to stitch to keep the shoulder pad in place. And I think I'm going to just use my thread and needle to secure this shoulder pad to the side. All right, so I went ahead to pin the shoulder pad as much as possible. When pinning, what I did was I made sure that I was curving it. I wasn't just doing it on a straight line because I found out that that wasn't laying well. So I just made sure that I pinned the middle and then I curved it as much as possible so that it will lay the way it's supposed to lay. So if you have to do this step, I'll suggest that you pin the shoulder pad to the armhole first and then make sure you are doing it whilst it's curved. Alright, so I have gone ahead to stitch the shoulder pad just to secure it for the meantime. What I'm going to do now is to do everything that I have done for the blazer for the lining. All this while, I have just ignored the lining. So I have gone ahead to reduce my lining. I made a mistake when laundering my blazer. I was actually looking for the care instructions and I couldn't find it. I ended up putting it into the washer. It caused the shell or the linen to stretch. So I have a bit of extra lining and I was wondering why that was. After watching some videos, I realized it's because I put it in the washer. Should you come into an issue like that, I actually pressed it to get the full length and I've gone ahead to pin it inside. I'm going to be pressing again after I have made sure that this is how I actually want it to be. Okay, so after doing that, I'm just going to turn it inside out. Honestly, this is the first time I'm doing this. I'm really not sure of the outcome. I'm just gonna cut it in bits. I'm tacking the hem of the lining to the hem of the shell itself. I already started, so I'm just tacking everything in. And then when I finish, I'm going to turn it inside out and just stitch it together to make it much stronger. Okay, so tacking is all done and I could literally just leave it like this, but I'm going to go in to stitch it. Tacking just puts it in place for me. I don't have to figure out where I need to stitch. Okay, so now that I've tacked that and I'm able to turn it inside out, I have a clear idea of the excess to cut. Okay, so now I'm going to stitch 1/2 inch all the way down. I am done stitching. I'm just going to use my seam ripper to remove the tack that I did. This step is not necessary if you don't have an issue like mine. You don't have to do this. If you have an issue like mine, this is a great way to fix that. Okay, so for the sleeve, I am going to just take 1 inch on just the side. I'm not going to deal with the seam that goes towards the back of the arm, but before I do that, we have to detach it. Alright, so I've gone ahead to detach the lining. I'm going to be measuring 1 inch on the cuff. And I'm going to pin all along to the armhole. Okay, so as you can see, I've gone ahead to pin my sleeves and the lining, but I made sure I left the opening because that's how we're going to be turning the blazer to the right side when we are done. Now I've gone ahead to stitch and I had to trim the excess away. The next step is to press the seams open and I'm going to stitch this opening together, which is the cuff. So when I turn it inside out, it's going to look like this. It's time for me to attach the sleeves. I went ahead to tack all the layers. I used my thread and my needle and did running stitches all around to keep it in place. So I went ahead to do this side. I'm going to show you two ways of doing this, the easier way and more advanced way. I'm just aligning the seams together and I'm going to pin. And I'm going to do this all around. I got burnt by an iron because I was watching a YouTube video whilst ironing. Please don't do that. Alright, so I've gone ahead to thread my needle with a contrasting thread and I'm just going to start tacking. Now we need to also attach the lining. This is where this space here comes in handy. Now you can put your hand in here, even though there's a space here, ignore that. Put your hand in here and pull it out. So you want the right side of the lining to be on the right side of the lining of the blazer. The tricky part to it is that you're going to have this part hanging here. You can actually sew it on the sewing machine like that. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. I should sew gathering stitch so it fits in here a little bit. All right, so I've gone ahead to sew basting stitches on the shoulder and I'm just going to pull it. So this is what you do for certain sleeves. So I'm going to use my thread and needle again and I'm going to sew the lining down. Alright guys, I'm done tacking the lining to the armhole. The next step is to use my sewing machine to sew all around. After stitching that, we can go ahead to take everything in and then we can close this part and we are done. If you don't want to use this method, what you can do is sew the main sleeve to the armhole, leaving the lining, and you will just use your thread and needle. Make sure that you are laying the lining on top of the armhole, and then you're just going to tack. So you can do that all around and you don't have to deal with the method that I'm doing for this side. Thank you for watching. I would like to know if you do use these steps to resize your own oversized men's blazer. Also, let me know what else you would like to see me work on for you guys. Thank you again for your time. Love you all. Bye.